allowed to clap me, by the way. Dear brother, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. I've just spent 6.5 hours on top of that open top bus, mostly without a hat, till my brother Elias brought me a pink and black hat, which had people laughing at me all over the city, which kept me dry. So I'm a little chilled, a little numbed, so forgive me if I take a second or two to get going. And I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. As you can tell, it's not the ideal week for me, because I have candidates in the field in the elections who would much rather I was with them this evening.
It's okay, George, the most powerful engines take time to heat up.
Indeed, and when I heat up. So it wasn't the ideal time for this invitation, but I was determined to accept it, because it seems to me that the subject that you have chosen and the people that you have gathered in this tent, metaphorically speaking, are exactly the people, and the subject is exactly the subject that must preoccupy all of us over this next period in Bradford's history. In fact, if Bradford's not to become history, then professionals like you and small and medium-sized businesses working with professionals like you and like me are going to be absolutely key to saving the city. The short answer to your question about how local institutions can help you help the society is, well, if we don't change the local institutions, the answer is nothing. Because in fact it's the local institutions that have brought us low. It's in fact the City Council in this city of Bradford which has brought Bradford low. And I'm not just talking about the last few years of New Labour administration. I'm talking about the previous years, decades in fact, of administrations of all three of the mainstream parties, the famous three cheeks of the same backside that I'm trying to kick at every opportunity. And I can't forswear to make this point. You wouldn't expect me to in an election week. But there's no point in talking about institutions in abstract. An institution in abstract is merely a building and a schema on a piece of paper. What matters is who's in it and what are they doing with it. I mean, Parliament is an institution, but if there was nobody in it, or the people in it were scarcely worthy of the title, well, you'd get, well, I suppose you'd get Britain today in 2012. It's my case, it seems that a lot of people agree with me, that Bradford's institutions have lamentably failed the city and that people want change. And that's the first thing to note about institutions, is that they are not immutable, they are not carved in stone, they can and do change. Sometimes they change for the worse, sometimes they change for the better. And they are directly affected by the people who try to change them and what their intentions are. So, for example, Bradford elects a third of its new councillors on Thursday. If the people like the way Bradford City Council operates, they'll return all the existing councillors. And if they do, they should expect what they got before. If you choose the same old, you'll get the same old. In fact, one of the definitions of madness is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So, let's deal with this one institution of Bradford City Council right now. If the people like the way Bradford City Council operates, they should re-elect the existing councillors, and they'll get the same as they had before. If, on the other hand, they decide that they want to change that institution, then they should put themselves forward for it. If they can't do that or don't want to do that, too busy to do that, they should support others who are putting themselves forward for it with an agenda for change and with credibility as people who can deliver that change. And that's what's happening. Let's be candid, that's what's happening. People of all political persuasions have decided that the status quo is not as good as it gets, cannot be as good as it gets, that Bradford could do better than this, and that's what they are now bent upon achieving. The City Council today, in any case, is very likely to be a very different City Council from that which will obtain by the end of the year, whatever happens on Thursday. Because I'm pretty sure that the people on Thursday are going to vote decisively, I believe, a yes vote in the referendum for the creation of a directly elected mayor. That will change entirely the institution that we currently know as Bradford City Council. It will not make it redundant, it will still exist, it will still have a role vis-à-vis the elected mayor, but it will be a different role. It will be a role of, if you like, supervision, or at least reporting, a line of reporting. The mayor, the directly elected mayor, will be elected by the entire city and who will require to get 51% of the votes of the entire city. You'll no longer be able to have power in Bradford by getting 2,000 votes in one ward and being a big shot in your own party and therefore in charge of the entire city without ever having to face the votes of more than 2,000 people. You'll now have to face the votes of 100,000 people or more, and you'll have to persuade 51% of the people to vote for you. That means you'll have to be a candidate who can attract support in all sections of the community, not appealing to just one section of the community. That will not be enough to deliver you power. But the elected mayor, accountable, removable, transparent, constantly on view, constantly under the supervision of the electorate and the media, will be the person with whom the buck stops. There will be no hiding place for the elected mayor. The mayor will have to explain everything he or she does or doesn't do, and all the time, 7 days a week, conscious of the fact that the entire electorate will either re-elect them or not at the end of that 4 years. In my opinion, that will be a fantastic increase in democracy as well as a great increase in the efficacy of the governance of Bradford. And I commend a yes vote to you with all my heart. I, of course, have spent many decades in London where we have a directly elected mayor. I hope on Thursday it will be Ken Livingstone again, but if it isn't, it'll be Boris Johnson, and the case remains that both Boris Johnson and Ken Livingstone are the voice of London, have the focus of all Londoners on them, and are able to represent London to the world in a credible way, which a council leader simply cannot. Because a council leader, it's known, is one who represents at any one time only a tiny fraction of the electorate of the city. Birmingham will soon have a directly elected mayor. So will Manchester. So will many other major cities. And if ever a city needed a directly elected mayor, a powerful focus for the city, it is Bradford. I can't think of anywhere in the country that needs such a mayor more than Bradford, with all the problems that we have. So I hope you will vote yes in that referendum, and then we'll see who comes forward as candidates in the election come November. That's an institution, therefore, that's coming into being. It leaves behind it in Bradford City Council an institution that is changing. And another new institution that will be in place in Bradford by the end of this year is the election of a police commissioner. the chief of the police, the head of all the police in Bradford, will be an elected position. We ourselves intend to contest that position because we believe that policing has to be with the consent of the community. It's not the police policing the community, it's the police policing for the community. But it sometimes doesn't feel like that. I mean, some people need to be stopped and searched, but not because they've got a brown face or a beard. Not 26 times more likely to be stopped and searched if they've got a brown face, and especially if they also have a beard. That's not policing with the community, for the community. That's policing of a racially profiled section of the community. And we don't think that's right. Some people think it's right. Some people will run for election for police commissioner on the basis that it's right. And we will provide an alternative point of view. So that's another new institution coming into play. Then, a year come June, there's an election for yet another institution, the European Parliament, which I think is extremely important, though not many people yet agree with me. Britain needs to be a part of the European Union. We've got foolish Union Jack waving, red-faced, bucolic, fanatic Britishers who think that somehow we're not European, that somehow Johnny Foreigner starts 22 miles away from the south coast of England, although some of you would qualify as Johnny Foreigner in their eyes also. But we don't think that way. We think that if you're in an institution, you should do your best to be a full part of it. You should do your best to shape it. You should do your best to make it successful. We believe that Britain needs to be in Europe, that 60% of our exports go to Europe, that the European Parliament is important, and therefore we should be in it. And we should be in it with all our heart, and with both feet, not 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So these elections too, a year come June, will be important. Now, how does all that relate to you as professionals? Well, first of all, if a city is run corruptly, a notional city I mean, a hypothetical city, in this hypothetical city, if councillors took money in brown envelopes for planning permission in this hypothetical city, that would be against your interests as professionals, because it would mean that your planning permissions for your businesses or for the clients that you represent would stand or fall not on their merits, but on whether or not somebody got corruptly paid for the passage of that planning permission. And that would be a shameful thing, wouldn't it? That would be a thing unworthy of, say, a city like Bradford. Well, as professionals, you should not put up with that. I think all of you know such a hypothetical city. I think all of you know a ward in which, hypothetically, that might well be taking place. And you as professionals have a special responsibility to say enough of that is enough. We won't put up with being governed in that way.